The Galactic Tribunal hovered silently above the cradle of Earth, its obsidian hull glinting with a dozen stars reflected off its polished skin. It was a palace and a prison both, vast as a continent, draped in flags from every compliant species in the Empire. Inside, the council chamber brimmed with noise, clicks, hums, and shrill flutters of 100 alien tongues. The verdict had been unanimous. 5 human women stood at the heart of it all. Their hands were bound not by chains, but by thin magnetic cuffs humming with imperial arrogance. They wore simple clothing, jeans, flannel, soft cotton dresses. Not uniforms, not armor. Just home-worn fabric stained by children's fingers and cooking oil. They didn't tremble. That bothered the council. Silence, barked Grand Arbiter Veltalk, his throat sacs inflating with self-importance. His 7-fingered hand gestured toward the accused. The matter is clear. These females have destabilized entire sectors through cultural infection, open laughter, independent thought, the distribution of sarcasm. A low murmur of disgust. They bake unsolicited pies for grieving neighbors, Veltalk continued, voice rising. They plant flowers on graves without authorization. They encourage emotional rebellion through unsolicited hugs. The gallery gasped. Somewhere in the back, a 4-eyed O'Grabian fainted. One of the women, tall, dark-skinned, with a birthmark over her cheekbone, snorted. You forgot we also host book clubs. Very dangerous. The interpreter drone hesitated, unsure if it was meant to translate irony. A murmur passed through the chamber again, but this time it was different. Not outrage, confusion. She's smiling, whispered an ambassador from the Zur Collective, eyes blinking sideways. All of them are, said another. They shouldn't be smiling. They weren't just calm. They were almost amused. The youngest of them, a redhead with ink-stained fingers, leaned toward the nearest camera orb and whispered, "My husband's going to kill you all." The gallery erupted into scoffing laughter. Your husbands. Veltalk chuckled, eyes twitching with contempt. What are they? Plumbers? Grocers? Emotional support mammals. Another woman, older, soft-eyed, with crow's feet carved from years of love and sunlight, smiled gently. He bakes bread. Laughter thundered like cannon fire. In accordance with Section 404 of the Cultural Stability Code, Veltalk announced, you are sentenced to execution by ceremonial flame. Your demise will be broadcast across the Empire. An example, a cleansing. The cuffs tightened with a magnetic whir. Execution drones slid forward, their nozzles glowing with thermal heat. Cameras spun in preparation. Somewhere in a communications chamber, a technician hit a switch. The countdown began. On Earth, in a quiet corner of Missouri, a man in overalls knelt beside a tomato plant, brushing off a caterpillar with a gentle touch. His hands were dirt-stained, his face unshaven. He hummed a Hank Williams tune, low and steady. Then the screen, embedded in his wrist, vibrated once. He wiped his hands, pressed a button, and watched the broadcast flicker to life. The screen showed her his wife, standing proud, her wrists bound, hair windblown, eyes locked on something above the camera line. Her smile hadn't changed. His hummed tune stopped. Slowly he stood. The birds in the trees nearby went quiet. In Montana, a high school football coach sat in the bleachers after practice, sipping from a dented thermos. A video blinked into his glasses. He watched it all, Veltalk's speech, the laughter, the sentence. His hands didn't move. His breath didn't change. But the air around him thickened. In Maine, a mechanic shut his garage, locking the roll-top door behind him. A chime from his phone. He watched the same feed. And then, without panic, without fury, he descended into the basement, where the old oil drums hid something older still. 5 men. Ordinary. Dull even. Polite. Forgotten. Exactly as Earth intended. One by one, they activated old command panels hidden beneath the ordinary, under tomato gardens, behind tool racks, behind refrigerator walls. Fingerprint scanners blinked awake after years of dormancy. The lights on the panels read, Contingency Zulu, armed. The Galactic feed continued streaming across thousands of systems. It showed nothing but 5 smiling women and the countdown to their execution. Back in the tribunal, a Zenth diplomat leaned to Veltalk. Should we be concerned? They are not afraid. Veltalk waved it off. Humans are psychologically erratic. They smile when grieving, laugh during arguments, and weep at animated livestock films. Unpredictable primitives. The redhead whispered again into the camera. He told me once, if I ever die screaming, he'll make sure you die silent. Another diplomat muttered, that's not poetry, is it? Veltalk chuckled. Empty threats. Earth is too fractured to mount a response. Their military retired. Their cities distracted by festivals of, what is it? Candy costume begging. Halloween, murmured someone. Fools. The lot of them. Outside the tribunal, across the Empire systems, the feed was already going viral, not for the punishment, but for the women. Social nodes buzzed. Why aren't they afraid? Who are their husbands? What kind of people smile like that on the edge of death? In a room carved into the Himalayan ice, one man, bald, brown-skinned, a small scar above his eyebrow, watched the feed with one hand resting on a ceramic teacup. He exhaled slowly. I told her this galaxy doesn't understand consequence, he murmured. Now it will. He pressed one button. A pulse traveled down ancient Earth satellites, long dismissed as weather instruments. Dozens of them blinked awake, sending coded signals through the vacuum. Above the tribunal, a rogue drone paused mid-flight. Its programming fluttered. Its camera spun toward the women. Its lens cracked. No explosion. No declaration. Just subtle malfunctions. Veltalk noticed. Get that drone out of our feed. On a jungle moon deep in Empire territory, a technician screamed. Every screen in the command bunker had gone black, except one. It showed 5 men, one holding a ladle, one wiping his hands on a rag, one whittling wood, one sitting on a porch rocking chair, and one in a flower-covered apron. The ladle holder looked up. Gentlemen, he said, it's time. The screen cut. Back in the tribunal, the countdown dropped below 30 seconds. The oldest woman leaned her head slightly. Her voice, quiet as rainfall, reached only the nearest drone mic. You should have checked who we married. Veltalk stood to deliver the closing decree. A soft ping echoed through the hall. Then another, and another. Lights above the council began to dim, first in sequence, then sporadically, until the entire chamber flickered like a dying star. Do not panic, Veltalk growled. But the cameras caught it. Delegates looking over their shoulders. Glances exchanged. Subtle fear blooming, like mildew under velvet. One of the women chuckled. That's his signal. Whose? Someone asked aloud. Her reply was almost gentle. My husband's. On Earth, those 5 men who once taught, gardened, baked, and tinkered, moved as one. They hadn't spoken. They didn't need to. The quiet one with the scar unfolded an old uniform. The insignia read, Viper Division, Spec Ops 9. His voice, calm and steady, transmitted to no one and everyone. To the Galactic Empire. You've made a mistake. The signal was picked up by 3 ships near Proxima. Then 15 across Keldron space. Within minutes, 78 systems were pinging with unauthorized human encryption. The tribunal feed stuttered, glitched, and flickered back just in time to catch the redhead say one last thing. He once told me, if they ever try to burn you, I'll bring fire back to them. The countdown reached 0. The execution drones flared. But the flames did not ignite. Instead, the Imperial broadcast cut to static. Every screen in the Empire dimmed. An emergency signal pulsed once. Then again. And across the galaxy, 5 ordinary names appeared on screen. Not generals. Not politicians. Just names. Then one more message blinked onto the screen, in quiet white letters. You threatened the wrong wives. And somewhere in the void between stars, 5 old ships moved again, silent, lethal, and smiling. Rain fell softly on the rooftop of a small bakery tucked between the misty hills of Oregon, steam rising from the chimney in lazy spirals. Inside, the floorboards creaked under the boots of a man who moved like silence had weight. His name was Ellis Grange, age 42, apron dusted with flour, sleeves rolled up to the elbow. He was shaping dough when the static-laced emergency feed blinked across the wall monitor. He didn't blink, didn't flinch. The faces on screen were familiar. Too familiar. Marissa, his wife, bound at the wrists, her chin lifted like she could break a planet with posture alone. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She was smirking, just slightly, the corner of her mouth curled like she already knew what came next. Ellis wiped his hands, slow and meticulous, then turned the oven off with a gentle twist. Underneath the flour bin, he pressed his palm against a cold steel plate. The wall hissed. A metal panel slid open, revealing a locker lined in black foam. Inside lay a pistol with no serial number, a knife still crusted with alien chitin, and a comm-piece blinking red for the first time in 13 years. He slipped it in his ear. From Kansas, a gravel-soft voice spoke. "You see it." Ellis responded without emotion. "They touched our wives." Another voice, low, with a southern drawl, breathed. "Then let's remind them who we are." Across the globe, in places ordinary and plain, the men began to move. Beneath a high school gymnasium in Montana, Coach Del Steeltoe Marshall pulled a duffel bag from behind the bleachers. The boys' lockers rattled as he dragged it down the hall. Inside was an exo-frame with spinal sync ports, coded in a forgotten dialect of Earth's pre-unity special forces. The janitor watched, said nothing, nodded once. In rural Maine, on a dock faded gray with salt and thyme, a quiet fisherman loaded bait into crates. Only, the bait wasn't for fish. He stacked them methodically, muttering arithmetic under his breath. Coordinates, time delays, kill radius. Each crate labeled with a harmless seafood export code. In Brazil, inside a greenhouse steaming with humidity, an old gardener clipped orchids while his hummingbird drones buzzed in precise loops. The surveillance data they gathered would reach Earth's Shadow Command in minutes. These were not just men. They were ghosts sharpened into blades, legends folded into peace. They were the remnants of Earth's Spec Ops program, Program Widowmaker, officially disbanded after the Accord of Shadows. Secretly, it had never stopped. They had promised their wives a life without bloodshed. But their wives had been taken. In orbit around Neptune, a long decommissioned satellite received the reactivation signal. It blinked awake. Its AI, codenamed Emily, pinged 5 stored user profiles. "Good morning, gentlemen," Emily chirped in a clipped British tone. "Welcome back to hell." Back in Oregon, Ellis rolled up his sleeves farther and opened a comms channel. Phase 1, disrupt. Phase 2, broadcast. Phase 3, he paused. A flicker of something dark passed through his eyes. "Glass the bastards," Steeltoe finished over the line, voice gravel-thick with fury. "Roger that." Meanwhile, on the tribunal ship orbiting Earth, the alien technicians scrambled. Screens flickered, broadcast controls jammed. The execution countdown had failed not because of technical malfunction, but because the drones had been overridden. Silently, invisibly, Counselor Veltalk raged as his words bounced off failing speakers. "They cannot be this coordinated. Earth is unarmed." That was the thing about humans. They smiled when they killed, and they made themselves look harmless right up until the knife entered your ribs. In the shadows of old lunar colonies, ancient listening posts flickered with life. Each post had been seeded by Earth's Black Budget Defense Force, never acknowledged, never officially staffed. They were now fully manned, and all 5 men were already off-world. Ellis arrived at the extraction point beneath an abandoned observatory in Wyoming, where a disguised skimmer waited. As he climbed aboard, he looked to the stars, toward the speck of light that was the tribunal ship. He said nothing, but in his pocket, he carried a folded note Marissa had once written him. "If they ever take me, don't bring me home. Bring the sky down on them instead." The ship hummed to life. Inside, Del Marshall loaded ammo rounds, humming "The Devil Went Down to Georgia" under his breath. "Do we go quiet?" one of the pilots asked. Ellis buckled in, voice like frostbite. "We go polite." In galactic space, rumors spread like fever. Communication stations caught strange human transmissions, encrypted messages buried in old jazz frequencies, Morse code relayed through solar flare pulses, even children's nursery rhymes repurposed as tactical orders. Aliens couldn't interpret half of it. The other half terrified them. A Slaric ambassador tried to calm the council. Surely these are just threats. Humans are impulsive, emotional. Not these ones, whispered a Grell informant. They're not the humans who hold signs and chant peace. They're the ones who build graves out of silence. On Earth, the quiet fisherman packed the last of his crates. He wiped his hands on his jeans and leaned over to pat the head of his old dog, Charlie. Stay here, bud. If I don't come back, protect the tomatoes. The dog barked once, like he understood. The man stepped into his barn and vanished through a light that wasn't supposed to exist. Back on the tribunal, Veltalk received a private transmission. It was a video file simply labeled, "From Earth with courtesy." He played it. 5 men stood in a line, not in armor, not in uniforms. In denim and leather and old boots. Behind them, a vast wall of white noise flickered. Alien languages, council broadcasts, surveillance satellites, all blinking out one by one. Ellis stepped forward. "The Galactic Empire," he said, voice low but firm. "We apologize." Veltalk sneered. "For the delay," Ellis continued. "We were baking, teaching, loving. You interrupted that." Steeltoe cracked his knuckles beside him. "You've now triggered a collective force more dangerous than anything your empire's ever known." "We call it," said the fisherman, "marriage vows." The video ended. Silence took the council chamber like a falling stone. By the time they scrambled ships to scan Earth's orbit, it was too late. The strike had already begun. 5 vessels, old Earth warbuds coated in reflective stealth mesh, shimmered into existence. They didn't fire. Not yet. They simply existed. And that terrified the Empire more than any missile. Because if they weren't firing, they were waiting, planning, judging. Back in the skimmer, Dell watched through a viewport as they passed the edge of the atmosphere. "Funny," he said. "We told them we wanted peace." Ellis nodded. They never believed that peace was just a pause between wars. From deep space, an Empire dreadnought tried to scan the human ships. It failed. It also exploded. The blast was clean, surgical. Not a warning. A demonstration. Inside the tribunal, panic gave way to terror. The drones around the execution chamber went dead again. One by one, small displays in the council members' private comm units lit up with a single sentence. "Retract the sentence, or learn extinction from experts." No threats. No shouting. Just civility wrapped in nightmare. The redhead woman in the chamber, Juno, her name, closed her eyes. She could feel it, like gravity had shifted. Somewhere out there, he was moving. Her husband. The quiet man who read her poetry but once assassinated a warlord by slipping a note into his pocket that said now. The moment hadn't come yet, but she knew it would, and so did the Empire. Veltalk whispered into his comm, "Get me reinforcements." "No one is responding," came the voice on the other end. "Half our fleet is malfunctioning." Above Earth, one of the human ships opened a comm line on all frequencies. Ellis's voice came through, crisp and calm. "To whom it may concern, we are coming to retrieve our wives. You have 1 hour to begin apologizing, 2 hours to build them thrones. After that, we are not responsible for the consequences of your education." He paused, added thoughtfully, "Also, we'd like our pie pans back. We know you stole them." The comm cut. And in that hour, as alien systems scrambled and council members prayed to dead gods, the galaxy came to understand a new truth. Humanity never needed numbers. They just needed a reason, and they'd been given 5. Then the screens across the Empire blinked once more with one word. Just one. Polite. A low wind blew across the tribunal execution platform, strangely artificial for a ship floating in zero gravity. But the Empire preferred drama. It made their punishments feel theatrical. The stage was vast and circular, rimmed with flame jets and ringed by hundreds of delegates. In the center stood 5 figures, unmoved, unshaken. The women. Marissa, her hair braided in that same casual way she wore it at Sunday breakfasts. Juno, the redhead with ink beneath her fingernails and mischief behind her eyes. Ellen, with silver streaks in her curls and calloused fingers from a lifetime of pottery. And beside them, Nora and Beatrix, one a nurse, the other a gardener. None of them trembled. Their wrists were still bound in magnetic cuffs. The jets behind them hissed warm with pressure, waiting for a signal. "Final confirmation," said a drone above them, its voice metallic and cold. "Confess your crimes and beg for mercy." "Define mercy," Juno said with a smile, teeth bright beneath the execution lights. "Non-vaporization." Nora smirked. "Hard pass." The drone hovered, hesitated, then transmitted the moment up to the council tower. Above, in the high chamber where Grand Arbiter Veltalk sat coiled like a smug serpent, screens relayed everything. Delegates whispered among themselves. "They're laughing," someone muttered. "They're not afraid." "They should be," Veltalk hissed. "Light the damn pyres." But the order didn't transmit. The execution team at the platform stared at blank screens, confused. "Your transmission is jammed," said the lead technician. Veltalk slammed a claw against the interface. "Impossible." And then the lights dimmed. Not across the ship, across the sector. One by one, satellites blinked offline. Galactic comm stations froze. The translation software embedded in thousands of species' ear canals began stuttering, then reversed itself, playing Earth lullabies in ancient Latin. And into that silence stepped 5 men. They didn't descend in royal dropships or grand battlesuits. They walked, through smoke and static, from the docking bay to the platform, silent and steady, like ghosts returning to haunt the living. Their clothing was deceptively casual: leather jackets, denim, utility boots, belts threaded with carbon fiber. But everything about them felt dangerous. Ellis, Delaware; the fisherman from Maine; the gardener from Brazil; the coach from Montana. They approached the execution circle with surgical calm, their presence melting the arrogance from the air. Delegates watched from their towers in horrified silence, unsure if this was a performance or a war crime in slow motion. No weapons were drawn. None were needed. The soldiers didn't run. They stepped between guards and drones like they belonged there, each movement smooth and practiced, as if rehearsed in dreams. Their eyes didn't scan the surroundings. They already knew the layout, every vent, every weak point, every shadow. Del reached the central pillar first. Marissa met his gaze. "You brought the good boots," she said softly. He nodded once. "Wasn't sure what to wear to a rescue." "You look beautiful." She laughed. "They really thought they could burn us." Del sliced her cuffs with a glinting tool that hummed like an oldham. "They still can try," he said. "Once." The guards finally reacted. An alien captain aimed a pulse rifle. "Stand down or we fire." The fisherman stepped forward, smiling like he'd just won a card game in a dusty bar. "We're already standing," he said. "And you've already fired. Just not at us." "Not yet." The captain's hand trembled. Beatrix's husband reached into his coat and slowly pulled out a handkerchief. He used it to dust off a control panel, then pressed a button. The flames behind the women died out with a mechanical sigh. "Apologies," he said, looking up at the cameras. "We're disabling your execution toys. A bit of a fire hazard." The guards hesitated, and the drones, which once hovered like hawks above prey, suddenly dropped lifeless to the floor, one by one, in sequence, like dominoes falling. The council feed crackled. Ellis's voice replaced the usual broadcast host. "To the Galactic audience," he said calmly, "we regret interrupting your evening spectacle. But your empire attempted to kill 5 Earth women. You may not know this, but we consider that unwise." Murmurs rippled across the empire. Not riots, not panic. Something colder. Recognition. "This is not an act of war," Ellis continued. "It's a correction." Del lifted Marissa gently from the platform and helped her down. The other husbands moved with equal precision, freeing cuffs, checking for injuries, touching shoulders with reverence. Juno kissed her husband's cheek. "I knew you'd come." He tapped her nose. "You think I'd let your book club end like this?" She laughed, then paused. "You did bring the big ship, right?" He winked. and the bigger one behind it. In orbit, a dark shape emerged from a void, a ship so old it had no name left. It hummed with anti-grav silence and bore no lights, no insignias, only a sigil etched into its side, a ring of thorns around a teacup. The Empire knew that symbol. They had just never believed it was real. Widowmaker. Program Widowmaker had been legend, myth, rumor spread by black market intelligence sellers and drunk ex-consuls. A task force of human husbands trained not just in war, but in retaliation. Emotional retaliation. A species-level failsafe. And now it was real. Ellis looked into the nearest camera drone. Gaze like winter steel. "You tried to burn our brides," he said. "Now watch your empire smolder." He snapped his fingers once. Above the tribunal ship, 22 comm towers imploded in synchronized silence. Veltalk rose from his chair, mouth wide with disbelief. "This is madness," he screamed. "No," Ellis whispered into the feed. "This is marriage." The platform began to retract. The pyres dismantled. The flames cooled. Delegates rushed to cancel the stream, but across the Empire, citizens were already recording, already sharing. The story had escaped the Empire's control. On the execution deck, the women stood beside their husbands now, not behind them. Equals. Not rescued. Retrieved. Beatrix tugged at her husband's sleeve. "They called me a destabilizing influence." He nodded. "You are. That's why I married you." Suddenly, a shriek echoed from the far side of the platform. An Imperial enforcer, blinded by rage or panic, raised his weapon. Juno didn't blink. Her husband stepped in front of her, calm as morning tea, and caught the weapon's barrel with his bare hand. The metal groaned, then melted. The enforcer fell back, screaming. No blood was spilled, just quiet fury. Dell turned to the cameras. "We didn't come to destroy you, but you just taught the galaxy a very important truth." He glanced at Marissa, then at the stars beyond. "You can mess with humans. You can mock us, sanction us, even invade our damn moon. But if you touch the people we love..." He let the silence finish the sentence, and the Empire filled it with fear. The execution stage fully retracted into the hull. The platform lights shut down. And somewhere in deep space, thousands of alien strategists stared at the footage and realized this wasn't just a retaliation. It was a test, a warning, a display of how gentle human love could become the cruelest weapon. As the tribunal ship systems rebooted in scattered bursts, the final broadcast flickered once more to life. 5 couples side by side. No explosions. No battle cries. Just presence. Then a final message blinked into every active comm channel across all sectors. "The fire you lit just illuminated your funeral." Somewhere behind the stars, Empire fleet commanders began evacuating moons they thought were safe. Governors retracted propaganda orders. Cultures that once mocked Earth now memorized its history. And in the final moment of broadcast silence, Marissa looked to the camera and said, "I'd like my pie dish back. You know who you are." And the screen went black. Stars flickered dimly above the imperial capital of Solari Prime, as if even constellations were holding their breath. The main comm tower, the tallest in known galactic space, pulsed nervously with a dying red light. Systems rebooted. Hard drives spun without rhythm. Holographic screens blinked in and out. All across the Empire's networks, feed disruption errors scrolled like death chants. At the core of the tower, the Empire's most sacred chamber, the broadcast cathedral, was in chaos. Technicians shouted in a dozen alien dialects. Ambassadors pressed fingers, claws, and tendrils to ear translators, all failing to make contact with their home systems. Streams once flooded with entertainment and propaganda now showed only static or worse, human music. Soft, haunting Earth tunes played uninvited. Jazz with no rhythm, lullabies with too much sorrow. High Executor Meltraz stood at the edge of the central dais, sweat glistening on his pale scales. "Trace the source," he snarled. "We can't," the lead engineer stammered, a 12-eyed Krell with all 12 locked on a blinking warning. "It's embedded. Every channel, every network, even the emergency protocols are corrupted." Meltraz turned slowly, his voice now brittle and low. Are you telling me Earth controls our emergency broadcasts? Yes, Executor. He opened his mouth to respond, but the cathedral darkened. Without announcement, the Empire's last broadcast began. A human face appeared on every screen, across every system, every outpost, every device, from battlecruiser dashboards to classroom walls on mineral moons. The man had a clean-shaven jaw, sharp brown eyes, a thin scar near his temple, and wore a soft blue button-up. His name was Ellis Grange. He smiled politely. "Good evening," he said, voice level, eyes calm. "I understand you were expecting another display of Imperial resolve this cycle. Perhaps a military parade, or the cremation of more civilians." Silence across the galaxy. Breath held. Children stared. Soldiers lowered weapons mid-polish. "My name is Ellis Grange. I was once a baker. I still am, technically. I'm also a husband." He let that sit. 14 days ago, your Galactic tribunal sentenced my wife and 4 others to death. Their crime? Compassion, empathy, influence. He didn't raise his voice. You tried to burn them alive. His smile disappeared. The image zoomed out slightly. Behind him stood 4 other men, the rest of the Widowmaker Corps, each one deadly in ways most species couldn't comprehend. They weren't posturing. They weren't armored. Just standing there, silent calm. "As of this moment," Ellis said, "your communication systems are under human control. We haven't shut them down. We've merely redirected the flow." Screens changed. Images filled every surface. Footage of the women on trial. Close-ups of smirking tribunal members. The glow of execution pyres warming smug alien faces. Then the moment the flames failed, the drones collapsed. The human men walked through smoke like vengeance wrapped in denim. The images paused. Ellis continued. "We were told we were too fractured to resist. That Earth's men had grown soft, civil, tame. Perhaps we are." Another pause. "But not when you touch our wives." Back in the broadcast cathedral, Meltraz tried to mute the feed. The button didn't respond, nor the override, nor the console shutdown. A technician screamed from the rear console. "Sir, the override is us. They're using our systems. It's not a signal from Earth anymore. It's encoded into the backbone." On a trade moon in the Zentaur system, a merchant watching the feed whispered to no one. They put the war inside the wires. The broadcast shifted again. Now a black background with white text. Operation. Gentleman's reply. Del Marshall took Ellis's place at the forefront. His face was square-jawed, sun-kissed, eyes like steel under southern dusk. "You executed that sentence because you assumed we were done," Del said. "You saw Earth demilitarize. Saw us bake, build, farm, raise children. And you mistook that for surrender." He stepped closer to the lens. "We weren't disarmed. We were resting." From there, the feed began displaying precise data logs, battle records hidden for decades, operations that officially never happened, blueprints for weapons that were destroyed under the Unity Accord. Each piece signed with the old Earth Special Forces emblem, an eagle flying through broken chains. Then came the footage from moments earlier. Empire ships exploding in silent void, Council vessels fried from within by what appeared to be emotionally triggered AI bombs, detonated only when footage of the 5 wives was shown to the targeting systems. "They didn't just save their women," muttered a technician on the trade station. "They weaponized marriage." Across the galaxy, former Empire allies cut comms, fearing retaliation by association. Entire colonies flew white banners over their domes, unsure if that would help, but unwilling to risk assumption. In the cathedral, the broadcast shifted again. Now it showed the 5 women, alive, whole, standing side by side, dressed simply. Not royalty, not prisoners, survivors. Juno stepped forward this time, her voice clear as frost. "You said we were corrupting the Empire," she said. "Maybe you were right." She looked into the lens. "Because somewhere in your cold machines and conquest rituals, we planted an idea. That love isn't weakness. That family is worth killing for. That peace must be protected by people who know war." The men stepped beside their wives. Nora's husband spoke next. "We didn't start this fight." Ellen's husband added, "But we will finish it. And the last thing you'll see." He looked at his wife. "Is who we stood beside when you called us broken." Ellis returned to the forefront. "This is your final warning. Cease all aggression against Earth. Release your political prisoners. Acknowledge your crimes, or we will assume you've chosen extinction. And make no mistake." He leaned closer. "We've been very patient husbands." The screen went black. Then one last message, pulsing in quiet, white letters across every screen, in every language the Empire had catalogued. "Do not grieve the Empire's fall. Grieve the silence that answered their cruelty." Back in the broadcast cathedral, the light stuttered, then fully died. The only sound came from a technician sobbing in the dark. Outside, on Solari Prime's vast skyline, entire buildings flickered off one by one as human tech embedded in everyday utilities activated remote shutdowns. The Empire wasn't being bombed. It was being unplugged. In deep space, Earth's stealth ships moved silently through the void, each one cloaked, each carrying only 5 crew members. They didn't fire. They simply existed, and that was enough. Because the Empire had learned what humanity really was. Not conquerors, not savages, just deeply loyal monsters, capable of unthinkable mercy and unimaginable revenge. Aboard one of the ships, Ellis stood in front of the viewport, arms crossed. Marissa joined him, wrapping an arm through his. "Do you think they got the message?" she asked softly. He looked at her. "No," he said. "I think the message got them." Behind them, the stars twisted into new formations. Constellations they didn't name, but understood. Each star a memory, each silence a promise. And Earth, far behind, burned with life. Still small, still flawed, but now untouchable. Back in the now-dead broadcast cathedral, a final emergency code blinked onto the control panels. Executives stared, numb. It read only, "There will be no second warning." And as the technicians scrambled to restore a single signal, a single screen, a single eye to comfort them, only one thing returned. A small music file. It began playing. A human lullaby. Soft, gentle. But beneath the melody was the hum of engines older than stars. Moving closer and smiling